noticed when you were a sportscaster you never took sides between the teams on the field. But a lot of people think you've taken sides now. They think you've taken sides with the progressive or liberal story.
They didn't say that a lot during the Lewinsky thing. I always found that kind of ironic as I've seen some of the criticism from the right. But what I've done on the air in the last 4.5 years, and particularly in the last year and a half since the special comments began, is really journalism. It's saying, here's what you're being told, here's the identifiable objective fact to the situation. This statement from the government may be a lie. And what we all did in this country, those who had voted for this president and those who did not, was to say, we're in dire trouble, we've been attacked, let's rally around him, give him all the support we can, and we will suspend our disbelief. The moment that it began to be obvious that we were being manipulated, used, that was when my suspicions began to take voice.
I watched you walk off when you were at MSNBC and they were covering the Lewinsky scandal, and I believe you said, this is ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is trip, right? You walked away.
Yeah.
Would you do it again?
I think probably it won't happen, but I would say that there were circumstances in this show. There was one occasion where I was prepared to go out the door an hour before one of the shows because we had one of those conflicting moments. This is very early on again. This is 2003. Right. When we were all still in that kind of, gee, should we suspend our disbelief? What if George Bush is right, and this is the kind of threat that he portrays? It's probably exaggerated because he's a politician, number one. But number two, what if he's right? I think a lot of us were saying, oh, okay, let's just tread gently. MSNBC hired a guy named Michael Savage. And he came on and not only did he do a show once a week that was basically just spattering invective on people he didn't like, and these people changed from week to week, but it was terribly produced. It was an awful show. One night I walk in, my boss is out of town, and the guy actually running the show at Countdown at the point said, we're going to run a Michael Savage commentary. I got to go now. And he ran away. And I said, we're not running a Michael Savage commentary, that's in the... And he was gone. I called my agent. Now, I'd just gotten back to MSNBC. I left, as you said, under the Lewinsky circumstances. A lot of bridges were burned. Came back. Everybody hugged. It's 3 or 4 months in. I'm enjoying it. I think I'm making a difference. I'm getting that little sort of skeptical thing back. And here we're going to have a Michael Savage commentary in the middle of it. So I finally get a hold of my agent, and I said, I have to walk out, don't I? She said, yep, you do. And I said, yeah, I guess so. Well, it was a nice career. I'm going to try to get a hold of my boss in Washington, and I called him, and I said, I can't write. He said, can you find some reason not to run it that doesn't pertain to the politics? I said, are you saying to me if I go and look at it and it doesn't meet production standards, we don't have to run it? I might be saying that, yes. Just give me something to work with. And I went in and looked at it. The guy repeated himself 9 times. So I called the guy back and said, it's very badly produced. He's repeating himself. I don't think you should run it. He goes, okay, good enough. But those things still happen, and I'm sure they'll still happen.
You said you were getting this little skeptical thing back.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's what we do. It is the necessity of journalism. Skepticism, especially if you're trained in sports. Skepticism.
Why in sports? I mean, what does sports have to do with news reporting?
In sports reporting, it is almost assumed that you need to have some predictive ability, and you have to be able to discern patterns and also discern when somebody's telling you, no, our shortstop's great, and he really isn't. And what the difference between those two things are. When the results don't match up to the hyperbole, you need to be able to see that, and you need to be able to say it in some sort of informed way. When you cover a sport like baseball or football or whatever, you're here for this part of the story. You've joined it 75 years in progress or 100 years in progress. It should be the same way when you're covering the news, and particularly in politics. And yet, as we've seen, you know, people in the political world now don't know what the Cuban Missile Crisis was.
It seems to me that this country has become two choirs, each side listening to only to its own preachers. Should journalists take sides when everybody else is polarized?
The definition now of being on one side is to have not flag-wavingly supported the president and anything he wanted, not handed him carte blanche after carte blanche after carte blanche.
Not saying mission accomplished,
right,
mission accomplished.
Exactly. It is. I said that I'm on the air with Chris Matthews on that day with Mission Accomplished on May 1st in 2003. And he's talking about this is George Bush's moment in history and this. And I said, don't you think that him wearing the flight suit's going to be a little bit of a problem during the election campaign? No, this is American history at its finest. I thought, gee, the guy's wearing a flight suit. You talk about the emperor's new clothes. Here it is. His new clothes are a flight suit when there was a controversy over whether or not he fulfilled his Air National Guard service. To say that suddenly became subjective, just to recognize that. It was as if you were saying, I'm only going to report, back to the sports analogies, I'm only going to report the Dodgers scores when they win.
You've started